The year is 3052, and the story begins on the border of the Empire, on a single star during a time of great interstellar tension. A man was walking down the corridor, reminding his assistant that he had been there for less than a second and asking her to pay attention. As he walked, getting dressed, he inquired about today's plans and the schedule of duty at the Imperial headquarters. Wei Lan reported to Yingyu that there was a meeting at the center today, and also a meeting with the Federation president and a banquet in the evening. Before Yingyu even mentioned the banquet, the girl had already prepared clothes for him according to his preferences. While adjusting his clothes, Wei Lan set an emergency notification after a certain time so that he would have a reason to leave the banquet. During all this time, the girl knew him so well that sometimes she did it herself, even planned his schedule. Since he still had some free time left, he was able to have a leisurely breakfast before a busy day at headquarters. As soon as Yingyu sat down, he noticed that the maid had placed tomatoes on the table, which immediately irritated him. Immediately after that, the man gave her a murderous look that she couldn't help but notice, and that's why she couldn't remain calm. Wei Lan assumed that she had not been briefed, as the commander hates tomatoes and always avoids them in his diet. Even after that, the man was unable to eat breakfast, as an alarm sounded about the approach of the dark sector. Putting on his cloak, he ordered the schedule to be pushed back a few hours, and also to rescue the warships and begin the battle. Since they were already used to such situations, this was not surprising, so the commander-in-chief ordered them to leave. There were already many wounded in the hospital, and the doctors barely had time to provide them with assistance due to the constant flow of victims. Wei Lan, who was bandaging, had to stop and go to an emergency room to see another critical patient. She asked Adjutant Guan, a subordinate commander, what the battle was like and how events were developing at the front. He said they had won, but the commander was wounded defending him, is now in a coma, and his condition was not the best. While the girl was about to help him, Guan had to report the situation to headquarters so as not to lose control of the situation. The girl was not surprised that he was so scared, because the commander's body was unusual and different from any humans. After all, in addition to being the strongest commander, he was the only creature bred by the Federation, an incubus with the appearance of a man. And in most cases, she was also the doctor on board, because she was selected for experimentation as a child by the Federation government. Before the commander joined the army, he grew up in a special facility for breeding experimental animals of the Federation. Stroking his face, Wei Lan continued to remember. Then he was released from there, and the president ordered all his memories erased and sent to the army. While preparing the medicine, Wei Lan thought they would never meet again. But 2 years ago, she was hired as a ship's doctor. As she administered the medicine to him, she knew that it was done because she knew him and his condition better than anyone in the entire Federation. The girl was acting calmly, until suddenly Yingyu suddenly came to his senses and grabbed her hand, unexpectedly for her. Unexpectedly, the girl didn't even have time to say a single word when the man pulled her towards him, pulling her closer with force. Noticing the glow of the horns, she realized that a period had begun when he was losing control and needed isolation. It is unknown what would have happened to her if the girl had not spoken up and asked him to let her go. These words immediately brought the boy to his senses. Yingyo calmed down a little, but could not hide his emotions and admitted that he constantly thought about her. The girl once thought that the boy who grew up next to her would grow up to be just like that. And in the end, it all led to the man wanting her to belong entirely to him. But now Wei Lan was trying her best to break free from his strong embrace. The commander was not going to let her go, because he wanted her to always be by his side, and he wrapped his tail around her. The girl explained that she wouldn't be able to cure him like that, and asked to let her go, but he barely listened and begged to kiss him. Realizing that she couldn't handle it herself, she hoped that someone would suddenly enter the room. Suddenly, she heard him call her the way he had called her as a child, even though his memory had been erased. Meanwhile, the boy feverishly confessed his love to her and asked if she loved him back. Hearing no response, Yingyu decided it was a refusal and began to cry, completely disoriented. Not wanting to see his tears, the girl wiped them away and quietly asked him not to cry. He immediately stopped crying and suddenly said he wanted a hug. Wei Lan replied that she would only hug him when he was completely calm, but the guy couldn't help himself, and instead of hugging her, he kissed her himself. The girl tried to hide her emotions, but it was getting worse and worse for her. She believed that nothing would happen if she allowed her feelings to come out at least once. Eventually, she became very hot and stuffy because he was holding her tightly to him. After a while, the guy was lying on her chest, holding her hand and touching her fingers. The girl was amazed that such symptoms appeared in the calm and reserved commander. Under normal circumstances, he would have come to his senses long ago, and it would be better for her to leave to avoid embarrassment. But Yingyu was not going to let go of her and continued to hold her hand tightly. As soon as Wei Lan tried to take his hand away, he immediately started crying, not even fully waking up. Unable to bear his crying, she covered his mouth with a kiss again to calm him down. After that, the man finally fell asleep on her lap. The girl carefully put it down and quietly left to avoid unnecessary trouble. While taking a shower, she noticed marks on her body left by the commander. Fortunately, the clothes completely concealed them, and no one would have suspected anything. Upon leaving the room, she immediately encountered Duke In, the commander's father, and an influential aristocrat. The man asked about his son, and the girl explained that she had treated his wounds and his condition was stable, although there was a period of vulnerability. Duke Ying directly asked if she had been with him all night and advised her to hide the fact to avoid consequences. But the girl understood that she would not be able to do this, and entered his cabin. The Duke assured her that she shouldn't worry, and added that the professor had said that an incubus forgets the night with its partner after waking up. So he suggested pretending nothing had happened and just continuing with his work. Wei Lan herself understood that the best solution would be to act as if nothing had happened. Meanwhile, the boy in the cabin no longer remembered anything, but intuitively felt that something had happened to him. Yingyo immediately wanted to call the aide-de-camp and find out who was in his cabin, but the Duke had already decided everything. At that moment, an assistant entered the cabin, holding a change of clothes in her hands. Looking at him, she involuntarily remembered if he had felt better since yesterday's incident. Helping him get dressed, she explained that he needed to take his medicine and that she would come back after breakfast. But the guy ordered her to find the girl he spent the night with. Shocked by this order, she even froze for a moment, not knowing how to find herself. But as his assistant, she understood that she had to carry out the order and tried to think of something. However, deep down, Wei Lan realized that she was not obligated to do everything without exception, and she did not understand his demands. A few days later, on board, she reported that the information about the meeting with the president and a possible war had already been sent. Looking at his behavior, she noticed his bad mood and decided not to provoke him again. The guy asked if she had anything sweet. She remembered that his tastes hadn't changed since childhood. Back then, he liked peach candy, but now it had a different meaning. She understood that sweets were not just a taste for him, but also a way to dull the symptoms of vulnerability. She always had sweets, but now she couldn't get them out of her pocket. The guy ordered the autopilot to be turned on and brazenly reached into her pocket. Seeing her embarrassed expression, Yingyu realized that she was nervous. The girl still couldn't forget the events of that night, but she forced herself to act calmer. While the boy ate the candy, she tried to distract herself from the memories of that night. After finishing work, the girl realized that the weekend had begun and informed Adjutant Guan about the security measures. After making sure that everything was working stably during her rest, she got behind the wheel and headed home, forgetting to say goodbye to the commander. As soon as she returned home, she was met by her mother, who had already cleaned her room after learning of her arrival. The woman immediately showed the results of her work, and the girl really liked it. Meanwhile, her father said he didn't trust her with the cooking chores and prepared her favorite dishes himself. But grandfather had a different opinion and believed that this man was wasting time and was not at all suitable as a son-in-law. His father wasn't hurt by his words, because he was used to it and just wanted to do something nice for his daughter, whom he hadn't seen in a long time. The grandfather wanted to say something more, but he noticed the looks on his daughter and granddaughter's faces and decided to remain silent. Wei Lan didn't have time to say a word when a mountain of food appeared on her plate, which she didn't know how to eat. Grandpa started talking about a young marquis from the Fu family named Chen Lao. Continuing to eat, the girl remembered this family from the first star system, which she had read about on the internet. Grandpa said she rarely has days off, so they're going to lunch with him tomorrow, and everything's already arranged. The girl almost choked on the news and asked directly if this was a blind date. Grandpa calmly replied that they would just eat, but if a relationship developed, it would even be good. Mother added that she shouldn't listen to her grandfather too much, and if she didn't like the guy, it was okay. The girl, who was definitely not in the mood for love right now, decided not to argue with her family. Meanwhile, the commander had just woken up and immediately noticed the absence of the assistant, to which the robot replied that she was on vacation. Not wanting to believe it, Yingyu asked again if he would really be without his assistant for 3 days. Meanwhile, the girl was on a date with Chen Lao, the Marquis of the Fu family, who also came here against his own will. The girl immediately realized that the reasons for their presence here were the same. Chen Lao suggested not to think about family, to make friends first, and introduced himself. While the girl was introducing herself, the waiter came up and asked her to answer the phone. Seeing the number of missed calls from the commander, the girl apologized, explaining that she urgently needed to call back. Weilan decided something had happened because the commander had called her 30 times in a row. Without even saying hello, the man immediately asked where the watch he had worn on the fourth star was. The girl was outraged that he had interrupted her rest over such a trifle, but restraining herself, she calmly explained where to find him and immediately ended the call. After apologizing to the interlocutor, she suggested continuing the conversation. But before Weilan could say this, the call from the commander rang again. The commander was in no hurry to explain the reason for the call and asked why she was so nervous. Meanwhile, the girl didn't understand what he wanted, because he already had enough things in his wardrobe. Realizing that he would not lag behind, she said that she would explain to the adjutant later where to find them. Yingyo immediately asked who allowed her to bring strangers into his house. The girl again forgot that he was an incubus and instinctively protected his territory, which is why he reacted like that. But Weilan could not come to his call because she was currently in Ancheng. The man already knew where she was, and as he got off the ship, he said he would pick her up personally. After that, he was the first to complete the challenge, leaving the girl completely surprised. Meanwhile, all the people were frightened at the sight of the battleship and assumed that something serious had happened. The man had already arrived at the scene and was heading straight for the girl. He knew where she was, but he didn't understand what exactly she was doing there. Therefore, Ying Yu was a little surprised when he saw another man next to her. Despite the fact that they were not alone, he ordered her to leave, and the girl tried to explain that she was in a meeting. The girl's new acquaintance noticed that she had the day off, so the commander had no right to give her orders. But the commander abruptly interrupted him, saying that he did not know the specifics of the work and that the day off had been canceled due to an emergency. After that, he took the girl by the hand and led her out of the restaurant. When they arrived at his house, Weilan immediately wanted to find the watch. She walked over to one of the bedside tables, certain he was there. And indeed, opening the drawer, she noticed him irritably at the very top. She pointed at the watch with a stern look and noticed that it was in the box, just as she had said. But the man stubbornly stated that he had checked and could not find it, accusing her of hiding the thing well. In her mind, the girl was already beating him up because he didn't even look under the documents, and he made her feel guilty. Out loud, Weilan just calmly said that she would take it into account and asked if he needed anything else. At this moment, the man was watching her, and she reminded him of a sea urchin about to explode with emotion. Looking at the schedule, he noticed that the president of the Federation was planning to build a station on a star, and he was going on a business trip. Since she is his assistant, he stated that she is obligated to accompany him. The girl, who hadn't had a day off in a long time, reminded me that she was on official vacation now. But Yingyu didn't consider this a good reason. Suddenly, the Duke called him and said that the Navigation Bureau had reported the entry of ships into the Anchene area. Despite the screams of his father, who did not understand what he was doing there, the man calmly confirmed the information he had received. Yingyo also added that he was the one who hid information about his vulnerable period and wants to know who that girl was. Realizing that his father was of no use, he ordered an assistant to be brought to him. The girl understood that she was not guilty of anything, but she knew that now she would be accused again. She tensed up even more when she saw his look, as if it was all her fault. Yingyo asked if she wanted to talk to his father. Weilan didn't want this so much that she mentally decided it would be better to die than listen to these instructions again. Without waiting for an answer, he told his father that she didn't want to talk and advised him to look for her himself. Looking at this act, the girl once again decided to believe that her boss actually had some kindness in him. But within seconds, the Duke himself wrote her a message demanding that she call immediately. While the girl was thinking that he didn't think her life was very valuable, she reminded him of the hedgehog again. As expected, as soon as she answered the call, the man began to accuse her, emphasizing her responsibility. Wei Lan, who was barely holding on, quietly replied that she was indeed working and trying to do her best. Looking at Ying Yu, the girl couldn't understand how she could possibly control him without knowing his thoughts. Meanwhile, Duke Ying ended the conversation by sternly ordering the girl to never repeat her mistakes again. Noticing a faint smile on the commander's face, she indignantly asked how he had the audacity to smile. In response to his words that he was the one who got her into this situation, the girl remarked that this did not at all look like a sincere apology. He wondered what exactly he had to do to make his apology finally seem truly sincere to her. The girl knew exactly what she wanted, so she decided to take a chance and asked for a raise in her salary. She immediately reminded him that he had called her while she was on vacation, so the bonus in this case was not an exaggeration at all. In addition, the girl was sure that she had done everything he had asked of her before the start of the vacation. To this, the man reminded her that she never found the girl he spent the night with. Wei Lan didn't understand how they suddenly went from talking about salary to his personal life. While the girl could not find an answer, he realized that his assistant had not completed all the assignments. When the girl wanted to say something, the man didn't let her do it and said that he was generously giving her a chance to make things right. These words calmed the girl down a bit and decided not to voice everything she really thought for now. The commander added that she had nothing to worry about, because he definitely would not leave her without proper compensation. Meanwhile, the girl called her mother, who anxiously asked why she had already returned to headquarters. The girl explained to her mother that urgent matters had arisen and promised to make time for her family. She was a little embarrassed to tell the truth, because he had paid her too much for her to refuse. The upset mother asked the girl to definitely take a longer and quieter vacation next time. Listening to her mother, who was already making plans for her upcoming vacation, the girl said that it was time for her to work. As soon as Wei Lan finished the call, she immediately saw the commander in front of her, who had been listening to the conversation the entire time. He directly stated that she doesn't know how to lie at all, and this is immediately obvious. The girl decided to seize the moment and asked how he knew which restaurant she was at. Upon learning that he had checked her GPS, she reminded him that he had no right to monitor her movements. The man just sighed wearily and suggested that she recall some moments from their past. In particular, it was she who promised to always answer his calls, but ultimately broke that promise. Realizing that Ying Yu would never admit her guilt, the girl decided that it was best to just calm down and not argue. After some time, they arrived at the estate on the Star of Spin, and the girl immediately began to settle into her room. She knew that succubi needed to consume devil fruits regularly to maintain energy, and here they were growing. She quickly assessed the situation, made sure the environment was safe, and informed the man that he could safely enter. She had many responsibilities, including controlling the water temperature in the commander's bathroom. As soon as the girl saw the commander, she heard him call her and replied that everything was ready just in time. Staring at her, the man was momentarily confused, but quickly regained his composure and said she could go. Noticing that the girl was in no hurry to leave, he briefly praised her, wished her good night, and carefully led her out the door. Once the door was closed, Wei Lan again couldn't understand his behavior, which changed like the weather. In the end, she was also very tired, so she soon went to bed, hoping to at least get some rest. But this time she couldn't sleep either, because she was woken up in the middle of the night by an insistent knock on the door. Opening the door, she saw Ying Yu with a pillow in his hands, who reported that an insect had appeared in his room. The girl was hardly surprised and didn't even pay attention to the fact that he woke her up in the middle of the night. However, noticing the slight tremor in his body, she assumed he was actually scared. So she calmly asked where exactly he had seen the beetle, so that she could quickly get rid of the problem. The man described the location so accurately that he even gave the approximate distance in centimeters from the pillow. The girl immediately came over, abruptly slapped the beetle with a napkin, and without a word, threw it into the trash. After that, she calmly reported that the insect had been destroyed and was about to return to her bed. But the man stopped her, grabbing her hand, making it clear that he wasn't going to let her go so easily. Seeing his expression, Wei Lan asked directly if he was still afraid of being alone in the room. Then she insisted that he come back to her place, because she finally wanted to have a proper rest. She suggested he go to bed, promising that she would make sure no more insects appeared. Although she didn't like it, she understood that she was facing her boss, whom she had to respect. Tired from all the events, the girl didn't even notice she fell asleep, sitting just in place. Wayland fell asleep so soundly that she almost fell, but at the last moment, the man's hand managed to hold her. The commander carefully lifted her into his arms and quietly laid her down in bed, trying not to wake her. Waking up, the girl saw a message from the commander, who had gone to inspect the area and left her an assignment. She didn't remember how she ended up in bed, and even assumed she might have accidentally bumped into him in her sleep. Soon, half an hour had passed, and at first the girl thought that everything would go smoothly without any surprises. But suddenly, she saw a familiar face in front of her, Seong Min, who turned out to be a friend from her student days. He came to deliver some documents that the girl needed to complete her current job. Knowing that Wei Lan was almost finished, he suggested they have coffee together, since they saw each other so rarely. The girl had a pleasant time in his company, exchanged experiences in medical technologies, and the shift came to an end imperceptibly. Already in transport, she noted that she would first pick up the boss, and then send plans of the premises and supplies after approval. After getting out of the car, the girl looked around, but didn't see her boss nearby and became a little worried. She soon noticed the commander and couldn't help but notice that this style of clothing suited him extremely well. At this moment, the man also noticed his assistant and asked how long she had been waiting for him here. He also asked if she had anything sweet with her, as if by chance, but with a slight expectation. Wei Lan handed him the lollipop, but he said his hands were dirty, so he opened them for her. As soon as his hands were clean, the man without hesitation ate the sweet directly from her hands, which surprised her a little. The girl was embarrassed by the situation and, hiding her emotions, quickly invited him to go to the car. When she was about to open the door, the commander's strong hand stopped her, preventing her from doing so immediately. Yingyo looked at the assistant carefully and calmly asked where exactly she had spent the day. At that moment, the girl smelled a faint peach scent from him and was surprised at how pleasant it was. Barely pushing him away, she replied that she was in the hospital, trying to speak as calmly as possible. The man was skeptical of her words, as she could smell coffee and the presence of another man. At such moments, the girl forgot that incubi have a stronger attraction and sensitivity than ordinary people. She explained that she met an acquaintance and realized he was offended, although she didn't understand why. Fastening her seatbelt, Wei Lan decided that in the future, she should avoid similar situations and misunderstandings. At the same time, she couldn't help but notice that even when angry, the commander looked attractive and cute in his own way. After 2 hours, they finally arrived at the estate, and the tired girl stretched with relief after the journey. Wanting to relax a bit and enjoy the evening, she took out a cigarette and lit it in the fresh air. She herself didn't understand why she felt much more irritated today than she usually did on days like this. At this time, Ying Yu, whom she had thought had long been in a deep sleep, was watching her from the window. As soon as he went outside and she noticed him, the girl instantly hid the cigarette behind her back. When asked about smoking, she replied that she had simply never done so in his presence before. He didn't understand the reason, and then the girl explained that he might not like it because everyone on board knew about it. So she was surprised to hear his answer that he didn't think it was anything unacceptable or bad at all. Wanting to change the subject, he suddenly said that she would go exploring the area with him tomorrow. Immediately after these words, he quickly walked away from her, leaving the girl confused and thoughtful. The very next morning, they arrived at the observation tower. After finishing work, she walked next to him and was worried because she saw that he had drunk much more than the norm. During dinner, everyone tried to get him to drink even more, thus demonstrating their respect for him. Even though Heilan tried to stop him, warning him not to drink, he hardly listened to her. But watching him further, she noticed that he was holding himself confidently, so he wasn't that drunk. After half an hour, they finally reached the estate, and the girl quietly said that he could get out of the car. Noticing that Ying Yu was in no hurry to open the door, the girl decided to do it herself. But before she could do this, she suddenly saw his tail, which appeared out of nowhere. Noticing the change in his behavior, she realized that he was back in his demonic form. Before she could even say anything, the man had already picked her up in his arms without any warning. The girl tried to resolve everything peacefully and asked him to simply let her go without any complications. She was a little stressed by the appearance of the tail, so she cautiously asked him to remove this manifestation. Seeing that he was unresponsive, she threatened to complain to the head of the Federation. When he listened to her at least partially, the girl breathed a sigh of relief, feeling that the situation was stabilizing. After that, she was finally able to get out of the car, which had become unbearably stuffy by this time. She decided to urgently find a cure for the hangover, suspecting that his condition was related to alcohol. But the commander quickly noticed that his assistant was in a hurry somewhere and immediately paid attention to it. Yingyo grabbed her hand and pulled her towards him, insisting that he wasn't as drunk as she thought. But hearing his loud hiccups only convinced the girl that his words were completely untrue. Despite this, Weilan still decided to go home to find the necessary hangover cure. While the girl rummaged through her medicine cabinet, the man watched her closely, never taking his eyes off her. Grabbing her hand, the man declared that, according to the results of his brain analysis, it was caused by her closeness and touch. Hearing this, Weilan finally stopped understanding the absurdity he was carrying and only looked at him in surprise. Therefore, she decided to remind him that she was the doctor here and understood such conditions better. Without wasting time, she handed him the medicine, which he immediately took without objection. He wanted to add something, but the girl interrupted him and told him to go back to the room because they had to work again tomorrow. The man didn't understand why she was blaming him, because, in his opinion, it was she who provoked the appearance of the tail. The tired girl explained that the medicine would work, he would calm down and return to his normal state. But her husband asked again, and then she clarified that after she sobered up, everything would definitely fall into place. Grabbing her waist, Yingyu asked again if she still didn't believe that he wasn't actually drunk. Realizing that the conversation was useless now, the girl simply invited him to come into her room. As she was about to enter, the man's tail accidentally touched her hand, causing her to flinch. Before she could say anything, he closed the door, and she was only surprised by the strange tickling sensation. Once in her room, the girl drank water and was finally happy about the long-awaited silence after a busy day. But the joy was short-lived, as her peace was soon disturbed by the sound of an incoming call. It was the commander's father, who wanted to know how his son was doing and if everything was under control. The Duke explained that the president had sent him here to make him more responsible and asked the girl to influence him. Although the girl knew that the commander was unlikely to listen to her, she did not object and promised to fulfill the request. After the conversation, an exhausted Weilan was about to go to bed, as this day had been extremely tiring, but she couldn't sleep because it seemed to her that the commander would reappear as soon as she closed her eyes. And it did. Unable to bear it, she opened the door and asked if he didn't care at all about her condition if he kept waking her up. But before she could finish, she saw the strange state the man was in. In front of her, he began to act like a child again and admitted that he missed her very much. The girl didn't understand why Ying Yu was in this condition again, because just recently he had looked completely normal. While Weilan was thinking, the man continued to complain and almost cried because she was ignoring him. The tired girl realized that she would not be able to rest properly this night again. However, she still had a faint hope, so she decided to first offer to show him to his room. But, as expected, the man refused, saying he didn't want to be left there alone. The girl knew that in this state, he needed emotional stability, otherwise Ying Yu would lose control of his actions. So she had no choice but to let him stay in the room with her. The man sat down on her bed without any hesitation, acting as if it was his own place. Slapping the bed next to him, the man boldly invited the girl to lie down next to him, looking at her with a slight smile. The girl mentally made a clear plan. First put him to sleep, and only then report the situation to the relevant services. But it seemed that the man had no intention of falling asleep at all, and was deliberately keeping himself alert, as if avoiding any rest. After all, he missed her very much and wanted to spend as much time with her as possible, regardless of fatigue or circumstances. Understanding what this could lead to, the girl first gently advised him to rest, trying not to aggravate the situation. However, the man insisted and admitted that he only wanted to fall asleep when he could hold her next to him. Weilan had already started threatening that if he didn't stop behaving like this, she would simply ignore him without any explanation. Seeing that she was speaking quite seriously, the man immediately obediently lay down on the bed, not trying to argue any further. Lying down next to him, the girl clearly stated that only hugging was allowed, and any other actions were strictly prohibited. However, even this did not satisfy him, and he wondered with displeasure why she did not hug him back. To avoid doing something he would later regret, the girl reached out and told him to fall asleep as soon as possible. After a while, deciding that he was already asleep, the girl allowed herself to close her eyes and fall asleep. She didn't even notice how morning came, and only when she woke up did she realize that it was already morning and Ying Yu was about to wake up. She knew that her husband would soon realize that they had slept together, and she had no idea how to explain the events of the previous night. But noticing his behavior after waking up, the girl realized that in reality nothing significant had changed. After all, as soon as Ying Yu opened his eyes, he immediately reached out to kiss her, not hiding his desires. She didn't understand what was happening to him, because last time he had come to his senses in the morning, and that worried her. And although the girl tried to contain her feelings, it became increasingly difficult for her, and the internal struggle only intensified. Meanwhile, the man suddenly began to bite her, as if trying to leave visible traces of his presence on her skin. So Weilan sternly ordered him to step aside immediately and stop any such actions without further explanation. And although he looked upset, he still obeyed her words and no longer tried to resist or insist. The girl ordered him to return to his room, tidy himself up, wash himself, and change into clean clothes. Meanwhile, she decided to start making breakfast to distract herself and calm her thoughts a little. While cooking, she chatted with the professor, detailing her boss's strange behavior that night. The professor directly asked if there was any intimacy between her and the commander this time, without avoiding the delicate topic. Although the girl was embarrassed to answer, it was important for the professor to know all the details of what exactly happened last night. But before she could answer, she felt his hands on her waist and heard him ask who exactly she was talking to. Not wanting to see further developments, the professor suggested talking later and immediately ended the call. At such moments, her husband embarrassed her greatly, but the girl tried not to attach too much importance to it. Meanwhile, the boy had cheekily remarked that he had heard her talking to someone and now demanded an explanation. Continuing to prepare breakfast, the girl calmly explained that she had been talking about work and asked him to sit at the table. But the guy didn't want to leave her alone even for a few minutes, constantly wanting her to stay by his side. In tried to influence her by resorting to manipulation, assuring her that he would miss her until he died. However, the girl did not succumb to these provocations and calmly replied that it was simply impossible to die of sadness. After that, she insisted that he finally start eating breakfast because unnecessary conversations were only taking up their precious time. In the end, the girl decided to have breakfast with him, realizing that otherwise he wouldn't leave her alone anyway. Watching him, she remembered how she had previously reported on work, routes, and plans, but now everything seemed to have changed. Watching him behave almost childishly, the girl realized that in this state, he was incapable of working. Noticing her pensive expression, the man immediately moved closer and asked why she looked sad. It seemed like the guy had made something up, because he suddenly said he would be away for a while, asking her to wait for him. Wei Lan wanted to stop him, but realized that this was a chance to talk to the professor calmly, so she put on her headphones. The girl told the professor about the situation, noting that he was listening, to which he replied that this was not a typical situation. She explained that during periods of heightened sensitivity, he usually loses control of himself, but upon hearing his footsteps, she fell silent. Looking at the boy, she saw that he was holding a basket of devil fruits of an unusual appearance. Yingyo tried to treat her to them, hoping to cheer her up and distract her from her anxious thoughts. Noticing that the girl refused to eat, the man promised to work with her to get her to agree. Feeling his constant gaze, the girl quietly asked him not to look at her so intently and to do other things. At that moment, she heard the professor's voice, who advised her to check the fruits, assuming that the cause was in them. So, as soon as the guy found out that she wanted to look at them, he immediately handed her one of these strange fruits. Understanding the risk, she asked to be given the entire basket to prevent the possible consequences of using them. She had no doubt that the guy would do everything to please her, and he complied with her request without hesitation. But the girl didn't stop there and even asked for an apple, which he had already started eating a few minutes ago. The boy reluctantly agreed to give it back, noting that only half of the apple was left. However, the girl also knew how to be persuasive and sweet, using this to achieve her goals without unnecessary conflict. And soon the boy did give in, giving her all the apples, no longer trying to argue. Taking the basket, the girl said she would go to the kitchen and sort out the fruit there, away from him. Weilan compared these fruits with other samples and concluded that their properties were significantly below average. She informed the professor that she had already submitted the data and suggested that it was the fruits that caused the energy imbalance. Looking at the man standing in the doorway, who had already missed her, she heard the advice to calm him down. Seeing that he was about to cry again, the girl realized that Ying Yu was offended because she took the fruits. But the man was offended for another reason, namely because they hadn't hugged for 5 minutes straight. The girl sighed heavily, sincerely not understanding how such a trifle could cause such an emotional reaction. Meanwhile, the guy considered this a serious problem and reproached her for allegedly constantly ignoring him because of work. Holding his tail, Yingyu quietly admitted that at such moments he felt abandoned and very hurt. The girl could barely contain herself, because this expression on his face seemed to her to be a frankly dishonest way of putting pressure. Wei Lan tried to control herself, understanding that this was a sign of loss of control, and the situation should be resolved as soon as possible. After all, if Yingyu finally loses self-control, he could do a lot of damage and even destroy the entire palace. So, admitting that she had been too harsh, the girl came closer and gently hugged the boy, calming him down. And although he finally got what he wanted, the tears still wouldn't go away, and he continued to sob quietly. At the same time, hugging him, the girl could barely breathe because he was pressing her too tightly against him, not calculating his strength. But her efforts were not in vain. With each passing minute, the boy gradually calmed down and his breathing became more even. To the girl, it looked as if the concubine had been waiting for the emperor for a long time and had finally received his attention. She even imagined this picture for a moment, but quickly dismissed the thought, realizing it was just a strange fantasy. Deciding that she couldn't leave him alone until he returned to normal, she stayed by his side. But the boy's father, as if sensing the moment, called, as always, at the most inconvenient time. The guy didn't like it, and without hesitation, he defiantly declined the challenge, not wanting to interrupt the moment. Grabbing her face with his palms, Yingyu said seriously that he would never let her look away from him again. Meanwhile, the girl imagined how angry the Duke was now, and reminded the boy that it was his father who had called. But the guy didn't care at all, because at that moment, she was the only one who existed for him. So when the Duke called again, he rejected the call again without any hesitation, without even thinking. The girl realized that she had to prevent any problems that might arise in any way. So she suddenly kissed him. The man was surprised by her action and immediately realized that he wanted more, not hiding his desire. But before he could do anything, the girl stopped him and explained that he had to answer to the Duke. At this, the guy asked if he could kiss her again after the conversation, looking at her with hope. Hearing an affirmative answer, he advised her not to delay in returning to him as soon as possible. But as soon as the girl accepted the call, angry shouts erupted from the phone about how she dared to ignore him. Meanwhile, the boy, touching her fingers with his lips, was indignant at how someone could raise their voice at her. While the girl was trying to find a reasonable explanation, Yingyu suddenly bit her finger and she pulled her hand away. He immediately apologized, saying he didn't mean to hurt anyone, and promised to be more careful in the future. After that, he gently took her hand and, touching it to his face, began to softly stroke himself. At that moment, the Duke realized that his son was next to her. The girl explained that the situation had been going on since last night, and according to the professor, the boy was not adapting to the fruits from the star. She added that they need to return to their home star for treatment and recovery, but this is complicated by unfinished business. During the conversation, she was constantly distracted by the commander, who could no longer restrain himself and wanted to kiss the girl. Realizing that the Duke might get angry, the girl quickly covered his mouth with her hand to prevent Yingyu from interfering. Duke Yin himself realized that now was not the time for conversation, so he hurried to end the challenge, but he could no longer contain his emotions. The guy, with tears in his eyes, reminded her that she had promised him a kiss and could not forget it. While the girl thought that she would soon lose control of the situation, the guy suddenly started kissing her again. And although she tried to resist, it was weak, as if her strength was dwindling. Eventually, it became difficult for her to breathe, and it was too hot, so she had to move away from him. She didn't understand it herself, but she felt that if he continued, the situation would finally get out of control and become unmanageable. So Wei Lan spoke in the sternest voice she could muster, ordering him to behave properly or he would be left without dinner. The boy wasn't too concerned about going hungry, so she threatened that without obedience, there would be no sleep or hugs. He was faced with a choice: either let her go and let her work, or be left without the usual comfort, hugs, and shared relaxation. Noticing his thoughtfulness, the girl decided to take the opportunity and quietly step aside, hoping to avoid further complications. But as soon as Wei Lan tried to do this, tears appeared in his eyes, and he begged her not to leave him alone. She sternly ordered him to stay put, warning him that any attempt to come closer would cause her to resort to punishment. Without backing down from her decision, the girl advised him to carefully consider the consequences of his own actions and not complicate the situation. But the boy still didn't give up, begging for permission to at least stay nearby and stand quietly by the door. She eventually allowed it, deciding that as long as Ying Yu didn't get in the way, his presence wouldn't be a problem for her. Meanwhile, the girl returned to her work and began to analyze the collected fruits with concentration. She constantly felt someone's gaze on her, and as soon as she looked around, she immediately saw a familiar and surprisingly cute face. She mentally began to beg her commander to stop this, because his intense attention was distracting her too much from her work. His behavior seemed strange to her, and she didn't understand why a grown man was acting like a small, defenseless creature. The girl thought that perhaps it was worth calling him closer, because he was not to blame for his feelings caused by his illness. Suddenly, the boy cautiously asked when they would finally be able to eat, trying to get her attention. The girl could not react calmly when she saw such an expression on his face that caused her mixed feelings. It seems that Ying Yu sensed her weakness and deliberately continued to behave in this way, intensifying her internal struggle. Realizing that he wasn't hungry at all, but simply wanted tenderness, Wei Lan asked him to wait a bit. Meanwhile, the Duke discussed with his assistant matters that required immediate resolution and careful attention. Duke Ying looked thoughtful the whole time, and suddenly asked if his son was always so dependent on his assistant. The assistant explained that, according to the doctor, he was used to her care, but such dependence should not go beyond limits. From her words, the Duke concluded that his son was simply too used to the constant attention and care from his assistant. After all, Ying Yu's tone resembled the one in which he addresses his bride, and the Duke mentally decided that this was damaging to the family's reputation. Therefore, Duke Yin ordered people to be immediately sent to take his son and return him to proper control. Before that, he informed his assistant of his intentions, adding that she should prepare for the changes in advance. The girl understood this in her own way and asked if she should go with him, because without her, Ying Yu might refuse. However, it would be better if she didn't say this, because the Duke had ordered her to find a way to convince him to go on his own. Looking at the door, Wei Lan noticed that Ying Yu was still standing there, but now he looked resentful and tired of waiting. His behavior again seemed sweet to her, but the thought of the Duke's men suddenly caused a strange emptiness in her heart. Patting his head, Wei Lan gently asked what to cook for him if Ying Yu was really so hungry and impatient. While the boy was enthusiastically saying that he wanted something sweet, the girl was thinking hard about how to convince him to fly away. Soon, Wei Lan finished preparing the dishes, and remaining calm, asked the boy to help set the table. The guy happily agreed, because for this he received her approval, as well as gentle touches and gentle strokes on his head. During the meal, the guy kept praising her dishes enthusiastically, repeating how delicious her cooking was. The girl decided that this was the best moment to finally talk frankly with him and tell him everything, but the guy seemed to be deliberately not letting her speak and suddenly brazenly forced her to taste one of the dishes. After that, Ying Yu calmly licked the spoon and, as if nothing had happened, asked what exactly she wanted to say. She was going to announce that a battleship would arrive soon to take him to the first star, but she couldn't add the main point. H could not have been truly happy, thinking that he would go with her, unaware of her true intention. Later, the girl had already packed his things, but the guy immediately asked where her own things were. Wei Lan wanted to evade the answer, but the boy seemed to sense it and offered to help carry her things. A battleship was already waiting near the estate with an assistant who barely recognized his usual quiet and obedient to her. But this only lasted until the moment when Ying Yu suddenly pulled her close to him and whispered that he wanted to lie next to her. After that, he finally kissed her, accomplishing what he had been silently thinking about all day. The girl understood that she should stop and not escalate the situation, but the guy remained stubborn. While Ying Yu was still obeying her, she firmly ordered him to go to bed first and get some rest. Making sure that the commander was asleep, she mentally asked him for forgiveness for her forced lie. Leaving the cabin, Weilan ordered her to report as soon as the commander arrived at the first star. Returning home, Weilan didn't expect that in half a day she would have time to get so used to this annoying incubus. Weilan tried to convince herself that the commander was just sick and not at all like her normal self. Suddenly, a call rang out, and she was surprised that they had reached the first star so quickly. Accepting the challenge, she saw an alarmed commander who was frantically searching for her and calling her name. His assistant tried to calm him down, noting that if he didn't stop knocking, he might get hurt. The girl understood that without her, the guy's condition would worsen, but she didn't expect it to be so bad and that it would happen so quickly. What shocked her the most was that Ying Yu burst into tears, saying he was obedient, and she still left him. While his assistant tried to calm him down, he abruptly ordered him to get out of the way and not to disturb him. The girl wanted to say something, but didn't have time because the connection was lost, and she could only hope that everything would be fine with him. Weilan tried to dial his number again, but all she heard in response was that the caller was temporarily unavailable. Realizing that she wouldn't achieve anything this way, the girl decided to just wait for news and not worry herself over it. 2 hours later, the commander safely reached the experimental base, where a doctor was already waiting for him for an examination. The following days, the girl did not leave the connection, afraid to miss the call, but none of the communicators answered. Only after completing her work on the spin star and returning to the first did she finally see the one she had missed day and night. As she left the building, Weilan noticed the commander and thought that he must have come specifically to meet her after work. Now he behaved as usual and immediately began to reproach her for having to prepare a report for him when she returned. The girl apologized for the delay, explaining that she had just completed an important operation and had not had time to inform him. Without answering anything, the man only curtly ordered her to board the ship without further explanation. She wanted to ask where they were going, but he interrupted and ordered them to find a place where they could eat. Soon they arrived at a restaurant, where the man ordered many dishes, some of which the girl also wanted to try. Weilan didn't even notice as she started talking to him the same way she did when he was in a vulnerable state. Of course, such a commanding tone did not go unnoticed by him and caused a certain reaction in him. It only took a moment for the girl to realize that she had just given an order to her own leader. Therefore, Weilan hurriedly began to apologize, fearing that he might reprimand her or even punish her for being so impudent. To her surprise, Ying Yu calmly obeyed and handed her a plate of food, as if inviting her to taste it. But it turned out that he simply pushed the plate over to help him clean the shrimp. While peeling shrimp, Weilan mentally complained about the bureaucracy that only served to exhaust assistants like her. But in the end, he still handed her a plate of food, as if following a principle such as a favor for a favor. The girl was no longer sure that she was facing the same strict leader, because Ying Yu even pulled the bones out of the fish for her. Suddenly, he remembered that his father had supposedly found the girl he had spent the night with. Hearing this, the girl almost gave herself away, but she was able to control her emotions and remain calm. The man added that he had seen her photo, but it seemed to him that it was not the same person at all. At this moment, the girl was really worried, because according to all the rules, Ying Yu was not supposed to remember anything at all. That's why she cautiously decided to ask him if he had any feelings or memories left. Upon learning that Ying Yu suspected her father of lying, she asked him about his plans, and he replied that he had to meet that girl. He added that he had already sent her the details, and now she should arrange for them to meet at a convenient time. The girl was genuinely surprised, and for some unknown reason, she suddenly felt internally anxious and uncomfortable. Noticing the girl's reaction, Ying Yu looked at her carefully and calmly asked what exactly was troubling her so much. Trying not to explain anything, the girl only discreetly asked to assign this task to someone else. She argued that she would be busy with important matters in the coming days and would not be able to complete the assignment. At this point, the man couldn't stand it anymore, abruptly got up from the table, and asked if she was making fun of him. The girl was confused, not knowing how to act, because she could not think rationally, but she understood that this could not continue. In the evening, A planned banquet awaited him at Luo Gong's, where the girl was to accompany him as an assistant. At the banquet, Wei Lan introduced the commander to Ms. Song Jin, who, as expected, impressed everyone with the manners of a metropolitan aristocrat. The girl understood that a person who devotes herself completely to work, like her, could never compare to such women. While she was lost in her thoughts, her manager noticed her depressed state and behavior during the conversation. Before the trip, Yingyu decided to change clothes, and the girl waited for him for quite a long time, left alone. Just when she thought Yingyu had disappeared, the man suddenly appeared, dressed impeccably and ready to go out. Silently watching him take her hand, the girl tried to understand what exactly he was up to. Seeing him put his watch on her wrist, Wei Lan was surprised to ask if it was the same one she had been summoned for. The man ignored the question and only remarked that the size of the watch and didn't seem to quite suit her. Already irritated, the girl asked again why he had put his watch on her hand without explanation. Yingyo calmly replied that he had given it to her for safekeeping so that it wouldn't be lost during the horseback ride. Wei Lan had no idea that another girl was watching them, and she decided to directly ask about their relationship. Remaining calm, the girl confidently replied that her interlocutor was simply making up stories and drawing false conclusions. But she answered evasively, noting that this was a personal matter that she was not going to reveal to the assistant commander. Realizing that the conversation would not continue, the girl politely said goodbye and hurried to leave without lingering any longer. After returning to her room, Wei Lan finally had the opportunity to rest peacefully and be alone. But as usual, this failed, and when she heard the clock tick, she guessed that the Duke might have seen her resignation letter. After picking up the phone, Wei Lan immediately heard the expected question and calmly replied that she wanted to leave her position as special assistant. When Duke Ying demanded an explanation, she remarked that he could not expect her to continue to deal with these problems after the engagement. The Duke himself understood that, from a moral point of view, this was indeed a difficult situation for her and required a delicate approach, but he still tried to convince her, noting that the commander was used to her concern and was unlikely to accept her dismissal easily. It was also not easy for the girl to part, because she had managed to get used to him, despite his complex and sometimes unbearable character. However, she replied out loud that the commander was simply used to having an assistant nearby, and added that she had already selected worthy candidates. After finishing the conversation, Wei Lan thought that after resigning, she would definitely spend more time with her parents and get some rest. As she was about to go to bed, she didn't hear the call from the commander because she had turned off her watch beforehand. Meanwhile, the worried Duke Ying confessed to his wife that the assistant was determined to leave, and she sharply criticized his behavior. Duke Ying made excuses that his son was too dependent on the assistant and hoped that the daughter of the Song family would help distract him. But his wife didn't want to listen to the explanations and noted that he would regret it when his son's condition worsened again and a period of vulnerability appeared. Meanwhile, the girl woke up, having barely slept all night, thinking about how the commander would react to her resignation. Looking at her watch, Wei Lan was horrified to see over 200 missed calls from the commander. Wei Lan understood that sooner or later she would have to resolve this, so she decided not to delay and call back immediately. To her surprise, the commander responded instantly and coldly remarked that she was running late today. However, unexpectedly, Yingyu added that he would be lenient this time and ordered her to come and prepare breakfast for him. From his tone, Wei Lan realized that the Duke hadn't said anything yet, so she decided to tell him everything herself. The guy didn't like this news, and he wondered indignantly how she dared not coordinate this with the management. The girl calmly recalled that it was Duke Yin who had recruited her to the headquarters. When Yingyu asked about the reason, she was confused because she couldn't directly tell the truth about his fiancée. The guy shamelessly asked directly if Wei Lan would not be his assistant. Then whose assistant would she be? Shocked by such a question, Wei Lan replied that she did not plan to work as an assistant at all, but would continue her career as a military doctor. The girl later returned to the Min Star, where she wanted to spend more time with her parents. Wei Lan decided to fulfill her mother's promise and go shopping with her, as she had long planned. But she didn't know yet that she wouldn't be let go so easily, and soon a military battleship flew over her head. Looking up into the sky, the girl recognized the rebel ship, while her mother looked around in confusion for her husband. The girl asked her mother to hide in the shopping mall and she decided to go in search of her father. Taking out a gun, Wei Lan reported that the shopping mall on Mingstar had been attacked by armed rioters and was urgently requesting reinforcements. Immediately after that, Wei Lan ran out into the street and opened fire on the battleships, trying to hold off the enemy and buy at least a little time. But it was obvious that the militants were well versed in the weapons of this star, and the situation seemed increasingly hopeless with every passing minute. While Wei Lan was anxiously thinking about when reinforcements would finally arrive, she suddenly noticed that they had already unexpectedly appeared. However, this was not the biggest surprise, because the real shock was that among the arrivals, she recognized an acquaintance from the first star. And this man turned out to be none other than her former commander, whom she had never expected to see under such circumstances. Wei Lan didn't understand, because this situation didn't require the personal presence of such a high-ranking commander at the scene. Wei Lan finally found her father and told him that her mother was safe in the mall, then asked him to find her. The girl herself decided to stay to help others and do everything possible to save people in a dangerous situation. After showing her doctor's ID, Wei Lan quickly joined the other medics, and one of the doctors immediately asked her to examine the injured man. And this man turned out to be her former partner, Chen Lao, whom the girl did not expect to see at all under such strange and disturbing circumstances. He said that he had recently arrived at the star's place on a business trip and asked about the situation, and she replied that she had come here to relax with her parents. Wei Lan began to treat his wound, but before she could finish, Guan's adjutant appeared and announced that the commander had urgently summoned her. Realizing that she would not be able to refuse, Chen Lao decided not to detain her and said that he would handle it himself so as not to create unnecessary difficulties. Meanwhile, the commander was already waiting for her on the battleship and sternly reminded her that she was still his military doctor. The girl was well aware of this herself, so she didn't even think about avoiding responsibility or abandoning her duties. The man suddenly announced that he was wounded, although at first glance it was completely imperceptible and did not arouse any suspicion. Therefore, Wei Lan was genuinely surprised to learn about the chest wound and decided to immediately check his condition to make sure the words were true. After removing his outer clothing, she was indeed convinced of the presence of a wound and immediately asked under what circumstances Ying Yu received this injury. However, the man ignored her question and instead asked what her relationship was with the man, and she replied that they were friends. As they talked, she continued to treat the wound and carefully asked if he felt any pain, trying to be as careful as possible. Meanwhile, the man continued his interrogation, asking why she had flown to this star with her recent acquaintance. Wei Lan made it clear quite sharply that it was none of his business and asked him not to move so she could finish the dressing in peace. As the procedure was being completed, Wei Lan suddenly felt pain, realizing that she had sprained her leg and could barely lean on it. Unable to keep her balance, she grabbed her husband's shoulder and quietly asked him to wait a moment until she felt better. But unexpectedly, Ying Yu himself pulled her to him and, hugging her, admitted that it had been extremely difficult for him to survive the last few days. When Wei Lan asked what exactly was bothering him, he replied that he felt bad because his assistant was not there. Moving away from him, the girl said discreetly that it was time for her to go, because her parents were waiting for her, and she needed to make sure of their safety. The man suggested that she and her parents return on his battleship to ensure their safe and quick departure. However, the girl didn't want to cause him any unnecessary trouble, so she politely declined the offer and decided to act on her own. When she had already left, he suddenly asked the artificial intelligence if there was a place where people could be held captive, even though he knew that this was strictly prohibited by law. In the end, Ying Yu decided to ask if there was a legal way to keep an assistant by his side without violating the established rules. In response to his question, Ying Yu was given only two options: either raise her salary or officially marry her. Meanwhile, the girl, unsuspecting, was peacefully resting at home, relaxing in a warm bath after an eventful day. At the same time, Wei Lan couldn't help but think about what happened to the commander, because he didn't seem to have a period of heightened sensitivity. Later, the girl fell asleep, but she was awakened by a call from the commander, who decided to contact her for unknown reasons. In a sleepy voice, she replied that she had just woken up, and immediately asked what exactly he needed at such a time. Yingyo recalled that he had left his watch for her to keep last time, and noted that she still hadn't returned it. Despite her drowsiness, the girl insisted that she had already returned the watch to his ship and did not understand why he was mentioning it again. However, the man stood his ground and claimed that Weilan was returning home that very day and probably left the watch with her. She didn't believe his words because she didn't see any point in taking his watch with her, which was also too big for her. After looking through her things, Weilan made sure once again that she didn't have a single watch and was finally convinced that she was right. Hearing her irritated voice, the man ironically asked if she had gotten up on the wrong foot today. But at that very moment, the girl suddenly found the very watch they had just been arguing about. Weilan assumed that someone had set him up unnoticed, and it could have been done intentionally to force her to meet again. And of course, it was Yingyu who did this, to find an excuse for a new meeting and personally pick up the watch at a convenient time for him. The girl was about to object to him, but she didn't have time to say anything because Yingyu suddenly ended the call without letting her answer. Before that, Yingyu only said that he knew where she lived and told her to come out to meet him outside the house in 5 minutes. The girl couldn't believe her ears because she didn't expect that he was really going to come to her house. However, it soon turned out to be true. He really arrived at her house, without hesitation or changing his intentions. Weilan couldn't understand how it happened that the commander personally flew to her for an ordinary watch. Not wanting to seem rude, Weilan still invited him inside, although she did not hide the fact that she was not at all pleased with such a meeting. Her mother immediately came out to them, clearly curious and eager to meet her daughter's commander. The girl didn't want this acquaintance, because the conversation could put her in an awkward position, so she said she just had to give the thing back. Yingyo stated that he also needed to go up to her office, and her parents immediately asked the girl not to delay, considering his business. And of course, the conversation with the girl's mother didn't go unnoticed. He jokingly started calling her the same name her parents used to call her. Weilan curtly asked him to wait where he was and not go anywhere until she picked up the watch and returned. However, the man could no longer stand the tension and decided to tell him directly about the true purpose of his unexpected visit. Although the girl did not like this visit at all, she still firmly asked him to behave calmly and not pressure her. Feeling almost at home, the man sat down in a chair and asked her to carefully review an important contract. The first thing that caught her eye was the title of the document, or rather, the words about the marriage contract, which stunned her. Although Yingyu talked about it as a normal deal, in the end, he directly proposed to her to marry him. The girl couldn't stand it, and immediately asked if he was really mocking her with such serious words. The man responded by asking if Weilan really thought he had come to her house just to make fun of her. When the girl wanted to clarify why all this was necessary, Yingyu suddenly asked her to come closer. Seeing the man abruptly pull her towards him, she thought about kissing him for a moment, but immediately remembered where they were. However, as it turned out, Yingyu only leaned wearily on her shoulder and quietly said that he couldn't work properly without her. He then remembered the professor, who explained that his succubus crystal energy was already accustomed to her presence, and again asked her to marry him. The girl didn't understand how he presented these, perhaps sincere words so casually, as if a marriage proposal was just a business deal for him. To confirm the seriousness of his intentions, the man added that within the framework of this agreement, Weilan could ask him for anything she wanted. Yingyo also noted that even if it was beyond his capabilities, he would do everything to fulfill her request. The girl, as if in passing, asked if he was engaged to Ms. Songjin. Upon learning that Yingyu was not engaged to anyone, she calmly said that she had no intention of getting married either. The man seriously asked why Weilan was so adamant about not accepting his proposal. Weilan explained that her family was wealthy and strong enough, so she didn't need to sell herself for a marriage of convenience. She was frightened by the feeling that Yingyu was treating her as a tool, and she was sure that her family did not need such concessions. Remembering that she had never given him the watch, she decided to go and bring it herself. Meanwhile, the man was clearly unhappy with her response, expecting her to immediately agree to his proposal. Anoshid, Yingyu ordered the artificial intelligence to deliver the girl to him by any means necessary. After all, the only thing he wanted was for her to always stay by his side. Going downstairs, the girl saw her parents, who said that the commander had urgently received a call from headquarters and had already left. The father immediately wondered what they were talking about, because the man left with a rather gloomy and tense expression on his face. Suddenly, the girl herself didn't understand why she started coughing, and her alarmed parents immediately suggested calling a doctor. Wei Lan said it was probably stomach problems, and she just wanted to rest for a while in her room. She also assured that she had already signed up for an examination and asked her parents not to worry about her. Her condition worsened, and Wei Lan suddenly realized that it was the effect of some unknown drug. As soon as she realized this, she was unable to do anything and fell unconscious to the floor. Waking up some time later, Wei Lan didn't immediately understand where she was, but she recognized the commander's bedroom. She didn't understand how she ended up here and why she had no strength left. The commander himself, who appeared before her, helped her to make sure whose bedroom it was. The angry girl asked directly if he had ordered her to be drugged and kidnapped. Hearing Yingyu calmly confirm this, Wei Lan reminded her that such actions were a criminal offense. In response, Yingyu coldly remarked that the reason was her refusal to marry him, as if she was obligated to agree. The girl couldn't understand how he managed to look like a victim, even though he was the one to blame for everything. Wei Lan ordered her to be released, but the man only moved closer, and she threatened to take her to court. The man calmly stated that he could keep her here until she became pregnant, and then she would definitely not be able to escape. The girl asked who gave him such an idea, and he replied that these were her own words, because otherwise he would be breaking the law. Yingyo added that he wanted her to be completely soaked in his scent, as if that was supposed to prove something. When the man leaned in to kiss her, the girl suddenly felt sick again. Yingyo was scared that she was so disgusted by him that she literally felt sick from his presence. Meanwhile, the girl understood that if she did not calm him down, he might dare to commit even more dangerous acts. Wei Lan pushed him away and said that she was really sick, trying to buy some time. Realizing that Yingyu was not going to let her go so easily, she was forced to resort to trickery. Wei Lan told him to stop it and promised to return to him as an assistant. But her husband didn't really believe her words, so she suggested signing a new official agreement. Then Wei Lan directly asked if he was really willing to force her into intimacy against her will. It was unpleasant for him to hear such accusations, because he did not expect her to think so lowly of him. After that, Yingyu quickly put restraining bracelets on her, saying that they were made specifically for her size. He added that they wouldn't hurt and even fit her perfectly, as if that was an excuse. Wei Lan realized that as soon as he put his watch on her, he had actually already planned her maintenance. In her mind, Wei Lan had already imagined getting rid of him, but in reality, she couldn't afford such a step. Lifting her up in his arms, he said he would go prepare a new contract. After placing her on the bed, Yingyu strictly ordered her not to even think about escaping. When he left, the girl breathed a sigh of relief and decided that for now she would have to play along with him. After a while, Yingyu returned with the contract in his hands and said that she could sign it if everything was okay. Of course, she was not happy with the clause that required immediate reporting at any sign of instability of the demonic crystal to stabilize it. The man noted that this was an extremely important and critical point and asked if she had any objections. But realizing that otherwise she would be forced to stay with him all the time, she had no choice but to sign the agreement. While the man checked her signature, Wei Lan cautiously asked if she could finally go home. The man unlocked the handcuffs and told her she could go home. But finally, he suddenly grabbed her hand, pulled her close, and asked if he could kiss her. And even despite her refusal, he declared that one kiss would help him get through the night of separation. Wei Lan understood that if she refused, he might not let her go, so she agreed, but only for a kiss on the cheek. However, he didn't seem to hear her last words, and pulling her close, kissed her on the lips. The girl immediately felt that this kiss was completely different from all the previous ones. Stepping aside, the man calmly said he would walk her home. After some time, they arrived at her house, when it was already deep night outside. This whole day passed for the girl as if in a thick fog, but every time she touched her lips, Wei Lan remembered that kiss again. She forced herself not to think about it, trying to return to reality. At the same time, she was worried about a strange pain in her stomach, and she decided that she needed to get tested. In the morning, Wei Lan went to the hospital and, realizing she was late, decided to warn the commander. As soon as she sent the message, Yingyu immediately called and asked what she was doing now. She replied that she had personal matters to attend to and said she would arrive later that day. After finishing the conversation, The girl couldn't help but notice that Ying Yu was increasingly resembling a demon in human form. Wei Lan did not yet know that the most important news was ahead, and when she received the test results, she found out that she was pregnant. The very next morning, the commander said that she needed to meet with Song Jin to sign the relevant documents transferring the estate to her. Wei Lan even started to get jealous, thinking that he gave her the estate, but at the same time forces her to hang out with his mistress while she herself is pregnant. However, in the end, Wei Lan decided not to get angry because she understood that he did not know the whole truth. After some time, Wei Lan met a girl who asked her to sign the documents if there were no objections. Jiangji noticed that the assistant was depressed, but still said that she even liked it. Suddenly, Zhang Jin began to hint that if she didn't have time for office romances with subordinates, then it was better for her not to make an attempt on her. So Wei Lan decided to cautiously ask if that girl had a boyfriend. Upon learning that this was true, Wei Lan asked if she was afraid that she would tell the commander, but Xiang Jin remained indifferent. At the same time, Wei Lan knew that the commander still thought of her as the one he had spent his first night with, and she had no idea how to tell him the truth. Returning to the boss's office, Wei Lan reported that she had settled all matters and signed the contract to purchase the house. Ying Yu explained that he only helped her get the estate because she told him the truth about that night, and they remained business partners. Ying Yu wanted to explain the situation, admitting that his past actions might have misled her, but now he would give everything only to her and wanted to get married. Ying Yu added that if next time she gets irritated by even his gaze, she should only blame herself. After that, Ying Yu ordered her in a calm but authoritative tone to come closer to him. The girl had already begun to believe that there was a chance between them, and she wanted to try this relationship herself. Therefore, Wei Lan herself dared to take the initiative and sat on his lap. Although the man sometimes behaved defiantly, her act was completely unexpected for him. Hugging his face, Wei Lan thought she had resigned herself to the role of a subordinate. But his words made her look at him differently. Wei Lan grabbed him by the clothes and asked him if he was really ready for a secret relationship with his own assistant. But in a moment she was in an awkward position when he grabbed her hand and said that she was seducing him. The girl immediately reminded him that he was the one who started this dangerous game in the first place. Kissing her neck, Ying Yu asked if she really wanted to continue this between them. Before she could answer, she felt him turn her face to him and kiss her. Realizing that this could not continue, the girl stepped aside and suggested not to mix work and feelings. To his words about his dependence on her, Wei Lan replied that it was time for the commander to return to work. The man didn't want to let her go, but he understood that there was no other choice, and still agreed. Pulling away, he suddenly asked if she had drunk milk today. Ying Yu explained that he smelled him when he hugged her earlier. Wei Lan reminded him that it was time to work, and if he wasn't happy with something, he could find another assistant. The man realized that she was not joking and could really leave, so he decided not to argue. After leaving the office, the girl noticed the marks on her neck and touched them, trying to hide them. To avoid unnecessary glances, she hid the marks under her clothes and adjusted her collar. However, his words about her smelling like milk couldn't get out of my head. At that moment, she felt a sharp internal pain that indicated changes in her body. Wei Lan had no time to leave when he called her back and asked her to make coffee, saying that her presence increased his efficiency at work. She agreed, thinking that he simply felt less inclined to stay at work. Continuing to work, Ying Yu suddenly asked if she knew that Prince Puyuan was getting married next month. Showing the photos, Ying Yu added that after the wedding, the prince announced his upcoming marriage to Princess Ella. The girl didn't understand what he was getting at, but he repeated the word wife again, emphasizing its meaning. But Wei Lan still couldn't understand what exactly he was trying to tell her and what this conversation was leading to. Ying Yu clarified the question by asking if this meant that in the future, once officially married, he would be able to call her his wife. Smiling, Ying Yu added that he personally liked this address even more. If the girl had heard it from someone else, she would have taken it seriously. But coming from him, it seemed like just another strange nickname. So, while sorting through the papers, Wei Lan calmly replied that she didn't like it. Meanwhile, it was deep night and they had only just arrived at his house. Watching her husband slowly get out of the car, she looked at him questioningly, and he reminded her of her kiss yesterday. The girl was outraged by his behavior because he himself insisted on this, and now he also demanded kisses every night. But as soon as Wayland thought about it, the man seized the moment and kissed her again, just like he always did. After a while, they both ran out of air and had to pull away. But this time, the girl decided to take advantage of his weakness and kissed him herself. However, she quickly pulled away as she was once again short of breath. Touching the wound on his lip, Yingyu asked his assistant to be more careful next time. The girl, touching her lips, reminded him that it was he who didn't want to let her go. A message from the Duchess came to the girl's watch, asking to meet her. Already at home, the girl was preparing food for both of them, but she didn't do well because her commander constantly interfered with her. So she asked him to wait outside until she finished. The man reminded her that just yesterday she herself had begged him to go with her to the estate, behaving completely differently. The girl replied that the Duchess had ordered her to visit the estate and asked him to keep her company because the Duke would scold her again. Yingyu seemed to reluctantly agree and said she could come pick him up tomorrow. But as soon as the girl approached the man, she felt nauseous again at the most inconvenient moment. The man was outraged that he had brought his assistant to such a state again. The girl, trying to lie, said that she was nauseous not because of him, but because she had been feeling unwell for the past few days. Yingyu was surprised and, touching her stomach, noticed that she had eaten almost nothing. Not wanting him to touch her belly, afraid that he would suspect something about where the baby was, the girl asked him to stop. But seeing that Yingyu did not back down, she herself removed his hands without explaining the reasons. After that, she told him to go have breakfast, otherwise they would definitely be late. After breakfast, they set off together to the estate. The boy's father, Duke Ying, and Duchess Yingyu, his stepmother, were already waiting for them. Seeing that his stepmother wanted to take his assistant somewhere, the man took the girl by the hand and asked where exactly she was taking her. Yingyoya replied that she wanted to take a walk with the girl in the garden so as not to interfere with their conversation with their father. Then the father intervened in the conversation, unable to bear the way his son refused to let go of the girl, and said that he would not die in a few minutes without an assistant. Although reluctantly, the guy was forced to let go of the girl, who needed to be alone for a while. Walking through the garden, the Duchess asked her for forgiveness for the Duke's behavior, and admitted that she was glad to have her near the commander. The girl nodded silently, but in her mind, she believed that this was a matter of principle, not a personal grudge, and she was not going to hold a grudge. Wanting to take advantage of the opportunity, the woman asked if the commander had been talking to any aristocratic women recently. After all, Ying Yuya had just noticed the kiss marks on him, and she found it quite strange. While the woman was warning that the commander should be more careful about his reputation, the girl imperceptibly took the devil's apple. The woman noticed this and asked in surprise why she was eating this demonic food that she didn't need. Seeing the demon fruit in her hand, the girl thought that it might be due to the fact that she was carrying a child under her heart, and that was why she unconsciously took it. But out loud, she said that she just wanted to taste it because her commander loves sweets. The woman didn't object, allowing her to eat. But her behavior seemed strange, because usually the girl was cold and professional. While walking through the garden, the stepmother saw that Ying Zimian had already returned home. Turning around, the girl saw for the first time Ying Zimian, the commander's sister, the youngest promising scientist at the Federal Space Agency. The girl immediately approached her mother and asked how she was doing. Then I decided to first meet his assistant, and only then visit my brother and father. Pointing to the backyard, Jimian suggested that we go to where the shooting range was and keep her company. Realizing that this was an attempt to talk alone, the girl agreed. During the shooting, the girl suddenly asked how much her brother was paid for the job. In response, Weilan heard that she would pay 10 times more if she did not allow her brother to marry Song Jin. Meanwhile, the assistant, preparing to shoot, asked what the real reason for her words was. Because she used weapons often, she managed to hit the target the first time. When asked by the assistant why she was so against this marriage, Ying Zimian replied that she was her lover. These words even made the girl drop her weapon. Grabbing her head, Weilan nervously replied that this matter was not within her competence, but the sister hinted that her brother is definitely a lot more involved in her life. The assistant advised to resolve this issue with the girl, noting that there was nothing serious between her and the commander. Meanwhile, she was finally found by an assistant who had been searching for her for a long time. Assistant Yingyu hurried to report that his master was looking for her and was almost losing his mind with excitement, saying that he was waiting in the pilot's office. After apologizing to Sister Ying Yu, Weilan explained that she urgently needed to leave. As soon as she entered the office, she saw a man working. Understanding his offended mood, she noted that his sister had called her to the shooting range, and she wasn't avoiding him on purpose. To get him to stop being offended by her, Weilan said she brought him some fruits and asked if he wanted to try them. But when Ying Yu leaned closer, the man asked if she had eaten those demonic fruits. He wanted to try them too, but he wasn't going to eat them as usual, but to enjoy them from the girl's lips. Stepping aside, the girl reminded him that he had to have dinner with his family, and in 2 hours he had an important conference at headquarters. Looking at the apple, the man noticed that it was not as sweet as her lips. But stopping in time after dinner, Ying Yu immediately took her to a meeting, and after a period of calm, the important day arrived. According to the schedule, once every 6 months he visited the star Poluotos, where his biological mother was, and today was that day. When they entered the sanatorium, they saw a woman sitting and drawing. It was Ju Jin, his biological mother. The assistant greeted her and handed her a package from the Duke. The girl noticed her strange look and realized that she suspected something. The man noticed this too, so he immediately stood between them and ordered them not to look at his assistant. Ju Jin looked down and noticed that his assistant had lost a lot of weight. The girl decided to take the luggage to the outbuilding and give them a chance to talk alone. But the woman, on the contrary, wanted her son to go and talk to the girl alone. Approaching her son, she reprimanded him for not even being able to carry his own things without an assistant. Realizing that the conversation could escalate into a fight, the girl tried to calm them down. But the man still listened to his mother, took the key from the girl, and carried the luggage himself. When they were alone, Jujin asked if the girl had lost weight due to her recent illness. The girl replied that she simply felt unwell, not wanting to arouse suspicion. Seeing the girl sneeze, the woman took off her shawl and covered her, despite Weilan's objections. After getting into the cart, my aunt said that it was quite windy here and asked me to go back to the room. On their way back to the room, they met a man who was already heading towards them. On the way, Weilan asked what she wanted for dinner, suggesting we go to the market, but the woman refused, saying that the workers would take care of the cooking. She reprimanded her son that an assistant is not a servant to whom you can dump all the work. But the man stood his ground, saying that she was his assistant and performed duties under his supervision. As he was about to help his mother, Ying Yu abruptly said that it was enough to manage his assistant. Thanks to a mechanized wheelchair, the woman drove forward herself, stating that she did not need his help. When she had already driven a short distance away from them, the man noticed that she had the same unbearable temper as before. Then his attention switched back to the girl, and he repeated that she seemed to have lost a lot of weight. Trying to contain her emotions, the girl reminded her husband that he should watch his own image. But he was more concerned about her health. Ying Yu was convinced that she had lost weight after she left him, and asked about her diet. The girl abruptly grabbed his hand to make him take his hands away. But in his mind, the man was already making plans on how to feed her, because he didn't want to let her lose any more weight. Suddenly, the situation changed when the girl noticed a bed of strawberries. The man thought it was strange that it was hand-grown strawberries, and the girl said that his mother had planted it and let her harvest it. Yingyo said he also wanted to try planting something on his own. Smiling at his wish, the girl promised that she would definitely teach him. She didn't hesitate and immediately gave him a small shovel. Under her supervision and guidance, the man still planted strawberries, albeit rather carelessly. Laughing, the girl said that his garden bed looked untidy and was planted carelessly. Weilan wanted to show how to sit properly, but she didn't have time because the man suddenly grabbed her hands. She didn't even have time to understand what he was up to this time, and although she didn't understand why, he started kissing her again. It was pleasant for her, so she didn't resist much. After a while, he finally pulled away and said that she looked beautiful and that he had done a good job with the landing. The girl thought it was useless to explain to him that instead of a bed, he had actually planted strawberries on her neck. While she was thinking, the man lightly pinched her cheeks and asked why she was frowning. Weilan removed his hand again and told him not to touch her, adding that she wasn't offended at all. The next moment, she noticed the man heading somewhere and asked him where he was going. He silently approached the strawberry bush and picked a few berries. After that, Ying Yu also silently fed them to the girl. Looking at his calm and gentle expression, the girl understood that it was impossible to stay angry with him for long. But, feeling guilty, she decided to share the strawberries with their real owner, saying that her son had picked them. Opening the door, Jujin noticed that he would never do such a thing and invited her inside. Entering the room, the girl apologized for disturbing me. Her gaze fell on the photograph, where she saw the Duke looking completely different. While the girl was looking at the photo, the woman invited her to sit down. Jujin asked the assistant if she knew why she was being held on this island. The girl, of course, was never particularly interested in this, but she knew that according to official documents, she had been charged with attempted murder. However, this information contradicted the facts, because then she should have been imprisoned in the capital's prison, but instead she was transferred to this island because she was pregnant. Upon learning this shocking news, the girl involuntarily touched her stomach, as if trying to comprehend the new reality and her own condition. Deciding not to drag the conversation any further, the woman asked if her son had forced the girl to do anything against her will. While the girl was thinking about how to lie, the woman calmly added that as a mother, she would immediately feel whether her son had a sensitive period or not. The girl decided to admit that he had once had such an attack, and then she was there, realizing that the woman was too straightforward and it would not be possible to hide the truth. Therefore, Wayland continued the story that the Duke immediately took care of the information leak, so the commander doesn't know anything about it. The woman noted that this is typical behavior for this president, who always acts cautiously and tries to control information flows. Taking the girl by the hand, the woman wanted to advise her that some things are more complicated than they seem, and if she is not confident in her own abilities, it is better to think things through carefully. Jujin knew that the girl had already noticed the photo where she was with the president of the Federation, but she remained polite and did not want to ask unnecessary questions, understanding that it was personal. However, the woman, surprisingly, did not object to telling her story, because she considered herself only a tool who had been tricked into coming here. The girl decided to ask if the commander knew about this, but the woman answered ambiguously and evasively, without giving a clear final answer. Wayland analyzed the situation and realized that this woman had been deprived of her freedom from that moment on, all because she had given birth to him, so now she understood why she was so cold. Suddenly, a guy burst into the room and announced that they urgently needed to return to the first star. The girl learned that one of the planets was being invaded from the outer sector, so they needed to intervene urgently, and he immediately said that she needed to leave. But before letting the girl go, Jujin handed her one capsule, which should be taken in case of severe illness. Turning to her son, she reminded him that his assistant had health problems, so she forbade him from sending her to the front line. Already on board, the girl reported that there was only half an hour left until arrival at the first star, and the Vanguard had already taken up defense, so the situation was under control. However, the man didn't seem to care at all. He didn't even listen to her, thinking about how his mother was taking care of his assistant. The girl didn't see anything strange in this, and reminded him that the woman he was talking about was his own mother. The guy was more interested in her condition and health, so he asked if she was really unwell. The next moment, he grabbed her in his arms again and began to examine her closely, noting that her cheeks were rosy and her lips also looked healthy. Stopping on her lips, he kissed them, and pulling away, he said that besides being warm, they were also extremely sweet. The girl, slightly tired of this situation, said that he was talking nonsense again and was not taking her seriously. However, the man started complaining again, claiming that since she had ruffled his tie, he should now carefully tie it again. Tired of his behavior, the girl just sighed and, without any reproaches, silently began to tie his tie, restraining her own emotions. During this, the man said that the situation on the planet was not critical, so he could return in a few days, and the girl was surprised that she did not need to accompany him. The man confirmed her words and added that the next time he met that woman, as a mother, she should not accuse him of exploiting his assistant. But even for these few days, Yingyu left her an order to eat regularly, and upon his return, he would definitely check everything personally. This behavior reminded her of a nanny caring for a baby. When the man asked if she understood him, the girl suddenly reached out and kissed him sharply, not giving him time to react. Stepping aside, Wayland remarked that then he should also be careful on the battlefield, and upon returning, she would personally check for any new wounds on him. The man, usually reserved, was momentarily confused, but still kissed her back, saying before that it was a real honor for him to be under her supervision. The girl led him all the way to the side of the battleship, asked him to be as careful as possible, and quietly added that she would wait for his return. Weilan yawned again and suddenly realized that she had been constantly falling asleep for no apparent reason lately. Suddenly, the next moment, she woke up in her bed from a sharp notification and didn't immediately understand how she could have fallen asleep so unnoticed. Looking at her watch, she read a message from the commander asking her to look at it immediately. But as usual, the man started talking about how much he wanted to kiss her. So the girl irritably tried to end the conversation until he suddenly asked if she wanted to see him. Weilan still didn't fully understand what he was talking about, because it seemed like she already saw him that way. But in a moment, Yingyu's tail appeared in front of her in reality. As he lightly brushed his tail across her face, she realized it was almost impossible to resist, even though it looked both seductive and unsettling at the same time. When she came to, Weilan started scolding him and asked why he had let his tail out in such a situation. The man replied that the tail had come out on its own as soon as he saw her, and added that he also missed her very much. The girl decided to finally disconnect before he said something else that would throw her off balance. Suddenly, there was a knock on the door, and Secretary Lin asked if she was free, as the president was expecting her at the palace. The girl was surprised and did not understand what exactly the president could need from her. Already in the president's office, she answered his questions, including about accompanying Yingyu to the island to meet his biological mother. He explained that he had summoned her today because their data and numerous indicators indicated that the commander was most dependent on her. However, the president heard a pre-prepared answer that the commander was simply used to her presence, and his crystal depended on her energy field, as Professor Bai had already noted. When hinted that she had been with him even during his susceptible period, the girl sharply replied that the commander was wounded then and she had only helped him, not acted on her own initiative, and if he had any doubts, she could check. Seeing that she was not susceptible to manipulation, the president calmly said that he had meant something completely different and asked her to look at a document. These were memory files formatted by the commander before he entered military service. Examining the diagram, she saw that out of 3,000 segments, 2,900 were connected to her. The president wondered if Weilan knew what measures the military department had taken to completely remove all fragments related to her. The girl always knew that his past memories were formatted, but she never suspected that so much of them concerned her. Clicking on one of the memories, she saw a man tied to a chair. The president explained that the military used electric shock and other torture methods, inflicting unbearable pain that intensified with each procedure, in order to completely erase from his brain everything associated with it. The girl could not understand why she had to go through such suffering if it was just about erasing memories. The president explained that the military conducted hundreds of tests before the procedure, and in many cases, it was proven that in critical situations, everything related to it influenced his decisions. In each of these cases, he was ready to sacrifice his own life for her, which caused a radical intervention in his memory. Weilan, who had all this time considered memory formatting to be just a technical process, could not even imagine that this procedure required such a level of pain and brutal ordeal. Realizing that he had almost 3,000 fragments related to her, she realized that he had actually suffered 3,000 times trying to forget her. Watching her reaction, the president realized that she was deeply impressed, but noted that his obsession these days was too absurd and dangerous. He asked the assistant to also understand the position of the Federation Empire. The commander-in-chief cannot have a fatal weakness, and she knows better than anyone what responsibility lies with him, so any personal contact outside of duty is unacceptable. The girl had only one question. Why was he doing all this, and what was he really trying to achieve? His answer was banal. As the president of the Federation Empire, he believed that the commander was the strongest half-incubus capable of protecting their state. The girl understood that he was simply using it as a powerful weapon, hiding behind lofty words, because once it was he who imprisoned her mother on the island in order to obtain the perfect weapon. So she asked if he was afraid she would tell everything, but the president calmly replied that, as far as he knew, her father's political career had not yet reached its peak, and she understood well what was at stake. He immediately added that before their meeting, he had already discussed the situation with the director of the experimental base, and he had suggested correcting the commander's dependence on her by finding him another woman. Therefore, he had already ordered the military to mix a seizure-inducing drug into the food, and at the same time sent another woman to his cabin. Without answering these words, the girl coldly said that if he had no more questions, she would leave. Now she understood why his tail had appeared during the call, and in a panic, she tried to call him again. She wanted to stop this horror and not let it go too far. However, a sharp pain in her stomach prevented her from concentrating properly and completing the call. In the end, she managed to get through, and Weilan learned that she was urgently needed at the command center, as the commander was in serious condition on the main ship. Hearing this, the girl immediately rushed to the command center without wasting a single second. Upon arrival, she learned that the door inside only opened with the commander's fingerprints or her own, so she had to be urgently summoned. As soon as the door opened, they saw a crying girl begging for help. Kneeling before her, she explained that the commander would not allow her to come near, and that every attempt ended in an electric shock. The girl immediately ordered her assistant to take the victim away and treat her wounds, and she decided to check everything herself. Once inside, Weilan looked around the room and noticed that there was no one else there. However, looking at the unmade bed, she saw a man sitting with his knees crossed, a bracelet on his leg. To avoid scaring him even more, she cautiously approached him and called him softly. Seeing him nervously chewing his own tail, she gently said that he shouldn't do that. But as always, the next moment the girl found herself pressed against him. The man, delighted that she had finally come, immediately kissed her. The girl wanted to ask him to get up first, but he had no intention of doing so. Putting the bracelet on her, he said he would never let her leave him again. The girl tried to convince him to let her go, because she needed to treat his wounds, but she couldn't help but notice that he was too eager to control her presence. When the guy tried to get closer again, the girl firmly stopped him and didn't let him close the distance. But Ying Yu took her behavior in his own way and decided that she probably didn't love him anymore. After that, as always, he began to cry continuously, not holding back his emotions and completely losing self-control. Seeing that he was trying to bite his tail again, the girl carefully took it from his hands to stop this behavior. Promising that she wouldn't leave him anywhere, she gently asked him to stop crying and calm down a bit. Weilan added that she would simply go downstairs for the first aid kit and return to him immediately, without delaying for a moment. Looking at his condition, she realized that if she ran away, he would probably pull her back by force due to his emotional state. Opening the medicine cabinet, she asked him to wait a moment so she could quickly prepare the necessary medicine for him. Meanwhile, the boy continued to lick his tail, as if trying to calm himself down. The girl again asked him to let go of his tail so she could treat his wounds and properly bandage the damage. Weilan explained that she had to disinfect the wounds first, and that might be a little painful for him. But the boy, as always, exaggerated the pain and almost cried as he pulled the tail out of her hands. Carefully wrapping his tail with a bandage, she said that if he wanted to bite something again, he should tell her right away, because biting his own tail and tearing off bandages was forbidden. She added that it was already difficult for her to bandage his wounds, so he should be more careful and listen to her. Meanwhile, the boy seemed not to be listening to her words, but only looking at his tail, which she had so carefully tied up. And now, instead of biting it, Ying Yu simply hugged his tail tightly as if it were something most precious. After that, the girl decided to check his horns to make sure there weren't any new wounds there. But the guy couldn't stand it and started acting playful again, distracting her from her inspection. The girl said that it was wrong to do that, but at the same time she involuntarily admired his appearance, noticing how cute he really was. Coming even closer, she quietly asked him not to get angry, because she was already not feeling very well, and unnecessary emotions would only make the situation worse. After she treated all the wounds, she suggested we leave, as the cabin was damaged by equipment and it was dangerous to stay here. But the guy wasn't going to leave, believing that the girl might deceive him again or leave him. The girl realized that he remembered her past deed, and suddenly a message appeared on her watch, which she decided to ignore for now. But as soon as the president called, the guy rejected the call, and she realized that this could have serious consequences for her. However, she decided not to panic and calmly apologized for the past incident, admitting that she had been wrong then. But the guy deliberately ignored her, even turning away so as not to look at her. The girl knew how to deal with him, and as soon as she said she would leave if he didn't want to talk, he immediately grabbed her by the tail. With tears in his eyes, he said that she was simply unbearable, and at the same time too important to him to let her go. Looking at his face, the girl thought she hadn't said anything special, but she realized he was up to something again. So she asked him to calm down and stop crying, assuring him that she wouldn't leave him anywhere. After that, she reminded him once again that they couldn't stay here because he himself had destroyed a significant part of the equipment in the cabin. But she understood that he couldn't think and speak normally right now, so she would have to change her approach and tactics. Therefore, activating the actress mode, she calmly said that she was not an incubus like him, but an ordinary person, and that because of this, she could be in danger, which immediately made the guy nervous. He immediately realized that the girl was right, because she was so fragile and delicate that she really might not survive in such conditions. So, without hesitation, he threw her over his shoulder and decided to leave. Although the girl had only expected his excitement, not such a radical reaction. Continuing to stay on his shoulder, the girl suddenly realized that this was the command center of the military department, and if he took her out of the main ship, everyone would see it. So, she asked him to hide his tail and horns so that others wouldn't see them and wouldn't arouse any suspicion. She added that he probably has a sense of ownership, like her, and he wouldn't want to show others the state the commander is in now. But no matter how hard he tried, he couldn't hide his horns and tail. They kept reappearing. After all, every time he hugged such a fragrant and tender girl, he wanted to circle around her like a peacock, and it was almost impossible to calm down. The girl realized that she first wanted to call her deputy via a closed interstellar link to convey important instructions. Just as the boy was about to forbid her from doing so, she unexpectedly kissed him on the forehead, silencing him. Patting him on the head, the girl asked him to be smart and said that she would quickly sort everything out. Wei Lan called her deputy and ordered all passages from the ship to the landing platform to be blocked within a minute, and this was the commander's order. After a while, as she was leaving, the girl said that it was safe here and he could let her go. But the man wasn't going to listen and declared that now he would always keep her by his side. The girl reminded him once again that he was injured and couldn't overexert himself, which made him a little offended by her words. Realizing that it was useless to argue, she cautiously asked if his tail hurt. He found this extremely sweet, and Yingyu was genuinely glad that she still cared about him. And while she was talking, the guy suddenly admitted that when she was so worried about him, he simply adored her. Coughing, the girl replied that it was already too noticeable because his feelings were literally out of control. She handed him his things and asked him to take a shower and change clothes, and to make sure his tail didn't get wet. At that moment, she received a message from the president, who ordered that as soon as the period of sensitivity was over, the commander should report to the palace. Without responding to the message, the girl took off her watch and asked the guy to wait for her for a while. After entering the bathroom and leaving him, she saw that he looked agitated and said that his tail was wet. Concerned, the girl immediately asked if his tail hurt and if everything was okay. Suddenly, she noticed that he was acting strangely, and the guy unexpectedly asked if she was in pain. The girl didn't quite understand what he was talking about, but replied that she was fine and nothing hurt. However, as always, he smiled slyly and said that she was definitely in pain, after which he asked him to blow on the wound a little. And eventually, a light blow imperceptibly turned into a kiss on the lips. Moving away from him, the girl noticed that the water in the bathroom had already begun to cool down. Realizing that Yingyu wouldn't let her go anyway, she suggested that he take a shower first and then they could hug, which immediately cheered him up. So the guy quickly went to the bathroom, took a quick shower, and asked the girl to wait for him for a while, promising to come back as soon as possible and not to make her wait long. Before going to bed, the girl still had to prepare the necessary medications, carefully checking the dosage so as not to mix anything up. But out of the corner of her eye, she kept watching the guy and suddenly noticed that he was listening intently to her every word, as if trying to remember even the smallest details of her actions and behavior around him. As soon as she finished preparing the medicine, the girl calmly approached the boy and gently asked him to drink it all at once, explaining the importance of the treatment. And strangely enough, he immediately drank the medicine to the last drop without any hesitation, as if completely trusting her. Picking the girl up in his arms, he smiled softly and said that now we could finally hug each other in peace, forget about fatigue, and fall asleep together, feeling warm and safe next to each other. After some time, the girl was still awake, carefully watching the boy slowly drift off to sleep, and patiently waiting for the moment when he would finally fall completely asleep and calm down. Hearing him quietly call her even in his sleep and ask her to stay by his side, she was once again convinced of how emotionally attached he was to her and how much he needed her constant presence. Demon living inside her, whose character and behavior are surprisingly reminiscent of this very guy next to her. Looking at Ying Yu, she involuntarily began to imagine what their future child might be like, what it would look like, what kind of personality it would have, and whether it would be more like him or herself. But she knew one thing for sure. No matter what happened in life, and no matter what trials awaited them ahead, she would definitely be there and do everything she could to protect him under any circumstances. The next morning, the girl woke up and only then notices that she had imperceptibly fallen asleep in the guy's arms, snuggling up to him and feeling his warmth throughout the night. Admiring his face, she couldn't help but notice how calm and majestic it was in the morning light, so she carefully reached out and gently touched his nose. But their sweet morning moment was interrupted by the sudden sound of a notification on her watch, which forced the girl to get up carefully so as not to wake her boyfriend and calmly check the message. Going into another room so as not to disturb his sleep, the girl picked up the phone and answered her mother's call, trying to speak softly. Upon learning that her grandfather had been in an accident, the girl immediately, without hesitation, gathered herself and urgently left for the hospital, trying to get to her family as quickly as possible. And when she arrived at the hospital, she unexpectedly received a call from her commander, whose call rang at the most stressful moment, forcing her to solve several important situations at the same time. She briefly informed him that she was currently at the main hospital in Anqing City, explaining the situation in a calm but anxious voice, trying not to lose control of her emotions. Meanwhile, Weilan entered the ward and immediately began asking her parents about her grandfather's condition, listening carefully to every detail and trying to understand the real seriousness of the situation. The father explained that the operation had just been completed, and the doctors assured him that there was nothing critical, although the mother was still very scared and could not calm down for a long time after what she had experienced. Wei Lan was sincerely happy to hear that there were no serious injuries and felt a huge sense of relief that allowed her to finally calm down a bit after the stressful journey and the news. She also asked her mother not to worry too much, assuring her that she had personally checked everything and that her grandfather's condition was stable, so now they all just needed to stay calm. But during their conversation, the call from the commander rang again, and less than 10 minutes had passed since the previous call. Yingyo asked her to come down immediately, saying that he had already arrived, and indeed, the girl, looking out the window, saw a large battleship nearby, waiting for her near the hospital. Noticing that he was still in his pajamas, she realized that he hadn't even changed and had immediately rushed to her after waking up, without wasting a single extra minute. The man reminded her that he had had a period of heightened sensitivity the day before, and spoke about it seriously, as if trying to explain his behavior and inner state. Taking her hand and gently pulling her towards him, he calmly said that he had undergone a full medical examination, demonstrating his determination and willingness to prove the truth. He handed her a medical report on his condition and noted that all indicators confirmed he had not had any intimacy last night. The girl already understood this and couldn't understand why he was showing her these documents at all, because the situation was already obvious enough to her. The only thing that mattered to Ying Yu was that the girl believed him without a doubt, and that was why he tried so hard to prove his sincerity and honesty in every word and action. The girl, who already trusted him completely without any evidence, calmly said that she believed him, after which the man unexpectedly offered her to fly with him and accompany him on the trip. Wei Lan wanted to warn her that her grandfather was in serious condition, but her husband assured her that he had already sent the best doctors to him, who were monitoring the situation and would do everything possible to stabilize him. In the end, she agreed to fly with him, but before that, she decided to definitely inform her family about her departure so that they wouldn't worry. Suddenly, she noticed his tail again and assumed that it was probably a result of excessive emotional stress or her fatigue, which caused her to start seeing strange details. The girl became curious about how his tail felt, and she couldn't help but touch it carefully, immediately realizing how soft it was to the touch. The man, whom the girl had thought was asleep all this time, suddenly spoke up and calmly asked what exactly she was doing and why she was touching his tail so intently. Pulling her hand away from his tail, she asked confusedly if he had fully recovered, trying to hide her confusion over the situation that had just occurred. And the guy, instead of answering, decided to show off his little horns to her, proudly saying how incredible and special they were in his opinion. The girl noticed that the warship would soon arrive at the headquarters, so he should get ready now and prepare for its arrival so as not to waste time. And he immediately obeyed her order without any further objections and fastened them both with one belt, ensuring safety during further movement. Not daring to look him in the eye out of shame, the girl apologized, explaining that she didn't want to wake him up and accidentally started touching his tail without any intention. The man, remaining confident, calmly replied that it was normal because his tail was really beautiful, and she simply could not resist its natural attractiveness. After that, the man suddenly asked the girl to touch his antlers as well, as if testing her reaction and continuing the strange but confident game in their conversation. And then the girl finally realized that from the very beginning he had deliberately started this conversation just to make her touch his horns and tail. After a while, an announcement was made that they had already arrived at the command center, so the girl quickly moved away from him. They arrived at the president's estate, and the man suggested that she go with him, but the girl understood that now was not the best time to appear before the president of the Federation, so she explained that her presence was not necessary at this time and decided to stay outside to walk around a bit and wait calmly for him. While walking, the girl suddenly heard someone's voices and had no idea that she would soon become an accidental witness to someone else's tense conversation. It was a quarrel between Ying Zimian and Xiang Jin, who was upset that she could not marry her brother. She was simply deeply offended by the fact that Ying Zimian paid almost no attention to her and, as it seemed to her, did not think about their relationship at all. But suddenly, without any objections, the girl kissed her, quietly explaining that he actually thinks about her all the time and just can't always show it in words. Wei Lan, who was watching this, was mentally shocked, considering the whole situation to be complete madness and an overly frank scene, as if deliberately displayed in front of everyone. But the worst thing about this situation was that she suddenly developed severe toxicosis, which caused her to experience a sharp deterioration in her condition and discomfort. So she had to go into the estate to wash and come to her senses, not understanding why her reaction was so abrupt and unexpected. She didn't notice when Shang Jin appeared in front of her, calmly applying lipstick and asking if she needed to call the doctors because of her condition. She also asked to keep what she saw a secret, because she knew very well that she had certain connections with this family and did not want this situation to become public. Separately, the girl asked if she had already informed the commander about her pregnancy, complaining that this information had already spread among the others. The assistant briefly replied that she would not reveal her secrets to anyone and also asked not to share her personal affairs, maintaining the confidentiality of the conversation. Once on board the ship, Wei Lan wanted to fall asleep immediately, as she was feeling a little sick and exhausted after all the recent events. But the man did not allow her to do this, gently touching her stomach and noticing that something was moving slightly inside, which caused his surprise and concern. The girl explained this by saying that before he arrived, she had accidentally drunk too much water, which made her feel slightly uncomfortable. She suddenly realized that they were not flying to the main headquarters at all, but to his family's residence, which made her listen more carefully to further explanations. Of course, she immediately asked him about it, and the man calmly replied that they were flying home first to take care of some important matters before the next events. The girl decided that this was even for the best, because she would be able to leave him for a while and at the same time deal with her own work, which had already accumulated over the past few days. So as soon as they arrived, she said she would leave him here and go to work herself. But at that moment, she suddenly felt very sleepy and tired. He immediately noticed her condition and calmly stated that he wouldn't let her fly anywhere in that condition, so it would be better for him to go work in the office while she rested. Looking at her worried face, Yingyu added that she shouldn't worry, and he would even count the time she slept as her working hours. After that, The noticeably more cheerful girl went up the stairs and sincerely thanked him for his concern, although she tried to hide it behind a calm tone. Meanwhile, Ying Yu was left to deal with all the things that had accumulated recently, trying to quickly organize documents and tasks. But within 10 minutes, he realized that things wouldn't work out that way, because he couldn't concentrate at all and properly understand all the work issues. So he took all his documents and went to the room where the girl was sleeping, because only next to her could he work calmly and concentrate. Soon, a robot entered the room, reporting that the sensors showed the bedroom door was unlocked and offering to automatically close it for security. The man replied that there was no need to do this and ordered the robot to return to its charging station so as not to disturb it. But after another 10 minutes, he finally realized that he wouldn't be able to work like this either, so he moved closer to the table near the girl's head to be near her. Soon the girl woke up after a sound sleep and immediately heard a strange sound, trying to understand what was happening next to her in the room. The first person she saw was the commander, who calmly explained that he was uncomfortable in the office, so he decided to change his workplace and work here. When his assistant finally woke up, he asked her to get everything ready by Thursday, as they were to attend the prince's engagement ceremony. He added that, according to the rules, all invited men must appear at the event as a couple, which created additional formalities for participation. And, knowing his character well, the girl immediately realized that if everyone should have a partner, then he probably meant himself as well. Trying to get rid of this topic, the girl suggested that he simply find a companion for himself so as not to complicate the situation between them. But the man calmly replied that there was no need for this anymore, because he had decided this issue a long time ago and had no intention of changing anything. Realizing that he had obviously already found a companion, she quietly said that it was getting late and it was time for her to go. The next day they met again in the afternoon, just when the engagement celebration was to take place and everyone was preparing for the event. While the girl was silently admiring Ying Yu, she suddenly heard him ask her to go to the dressing room and change into the outfit prepared for her. And the Cid added that his companion should look so that she would literally dazzle everyone present at the reception with her appearance. Did you like the recap? Want a continuation? Write part 2 in the comments.